Hey guys, it's PrimordialAA. Going to be making a video at the 33s today, and we will get started. Just going to be playing a normal set of 33s, focusing on fundamentals, but also creative ways to exploit low-limit opponents. So, for instance, if someone is calling out a position too much, I will be feeling free to 4x it or 5x it, and the same with raising limps, etc. Sorry, both of these people know that they're on camera now, so maybe we'll have some interesting matches. It seems like Zemox is a member of the site. He says he loves my Heads Up series, so hopefully I can give him some good comments on his play. I'm going to go ahead and call King 8 suited out of position early on. Not a call I always make, but against people I don't assume to play great post-flop, I will. And I'm just going to check it down. It's tough to make a value bet there. Let's see what he had, 4 or 5 clubs. So he didn't c-bet and didn't bet any of the streets with no showdown value. Here with 4s, I'm going to have to go ahead and make a c-bet. We get called, and I think there's no real way we can continue here, so we're just going to check it down. Try to get to showdown, and he shows up with top pair. Interesting. It's an interesting river there, because 10-jack came in and had a double gut shot on the flop. I probably would have tried to make a v-bet somewhere in the hand, but alright, so let's see. He has called out of position. Oops. Both of our button raises. So it's not too indicative yet, but it definitely tells us something. Here, I'm assuming he's been watching the series, probably a little bit more competent post-flop. I'm just going to go ahead and fold King 7. Queen 9 is an easy call because of how he played post-flop. He just checked down his no showdown value, which makes Queen High very valuable if we're going to get to showdown a lot. I'm actually going to make a value bet here. A little bit small, but here I will c-bet. He knows I c-bet frequently. I'm hoping that will lead him to call with any pair or a lot of flush draws. Against some players I would check that back, but against his first 3-bet, we're going to let him have it with ace 9. We know he watches the series, but we don't know anything about his ranges really, and I would assume I wouldn't assume he's going to be 3-betting too light, but we never know. We'll have to see how his frequency is. Just going to call ace 8. He's raising a lot of buttons. Ace high has some good showdown value. Because of that, I would have had to check call that flop. The turn, we just have to flat and hopefully check the river. Small bet there is interesting because he's never folding out better hands really, but I suppose it avoids a lot of chops with worse ends. And he also has some outs. When the ace comes, it can make a pretty solid value bet. Fours, I won't 3-bet early on. My cutoff is normally 7s or 8s. I normally won't 3-bet 7s. So he checks back here. Kind of interesting. I'm going to bet the turn, and then I think I'm going to have to give up on the river. Alright. I was wondering why he didn't c-bet. And because of that, we're normally going to have to at least call the turn. So I guess I prefer to lead fold the turn if we're going to get looked up by king high possibly. And when he raises, I'm assuming we'll almost always beat. Ace-8 becomes an easy call out of position again for the same reasons as before. I choose to just flat it and not 3-bet it. And here again I will make a value bet. He seems to be calling a lot. I'm playing pretty aggressive. We got 3-bet. I'm going to lower my raise size because of the 3-betting. If he wasn't 3-betting, it would be an argument to raise your raise size, actually. But when your opponent seems at least competent and is 3-betting a decent range, the larger your raise size is, the more exploited you'll be by 3-betting, by 3 bets. So we open 6-5. Here we call 8-9 out of position. Obviously we have to call that flop. Not a great turn against him. I would probably give it up if he fired the turn. So he hasn't really seen us drop our raise size much, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep 3xing. And here I will just flat. C-bet half pot on a very dry board. I'm just going to check right now. He checked behind this flop once again. We turn a gut shot. Obviously our ace is probably good. Our 8 is good a decent amount of the time. So I'm going to go ahead and call the turn. It's not a great river for us to see. And I guess this becomes just really indicative of what he's going to check behind the flop with. Last time he did it, he tried to represent a big hand. And it seems like he's trying to represent at least showdown value here. Or, I mean, at least some kind of hand he can value bet here. The 10 is just not a good card for us to see. And I think we're going to have to give that one up. Just going to flat Queen King here. He's played pretty passive so far post flop, shut down when we've called his bets. Here I'm going to make a little bit larger than normal value bet. Mostly because there are going to be a decent amount of weaker queens here and the 8 can still look us up. I'm fairly certain by that point that he doesn't have the 10. And I'm going to check raise bottom pair here. Just because I think that stab is super standard. I don't think we're going to get re-raised a lot here. We'll probably get flatted more than re-raised with overcards or middle pair or something. And we still have outs then, obviously. We can turn 2 pair and turn it into a strong hand. But his stab seems fairly mandatory there, and I just think we're going to get a lot of folds. Against some opponents I would check this behind. Against him, I'm going to go ahead and bet. I think we'll get a decent amount of folds, and we obviously have a ton of outs if he does call. He's been 3-betting us quite a bit, and his 3-bet is large, it's oversized, so we're going to be looking for a spot to reshove on him. I'm also going to introduce limping to avoid, to make his 3-betting less profitable if if he doesn't adjust. And we'll see whether or not he does adjust. So he min raises our limp, which is really bad generally. It's kind of interesting to see what kind of hand he would do that with. Maybe we'll ask him to share the hand history we can compare after. Here there's a lot of draws out there, so I'm just going to make a small re-raise and get it in. He happens to have a huge cooler versus us. And we don't get there. So we go back real quick. I just want to see if he's folded any of his buttons. He has folded. It looks like he's raising about 50% or so. I'm back to 3xing at full stacks. We'll shove here. If he's watched the video, he knows I'm going to reshove light. But I still think it's going to be very hard for him to call optimally when he's raising so wide. Here I'm just going to flat because if he has the ace, he's not going to get away from it on any turn. There's no flush draws or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and check behind the turn here as we turn a flush draw. And I will shove this river. I think the river is not going to get credit a lot. I just don't see an ace folding out there at any point. I was hoping if a king, queen, jack turned, then I would probably just make a value bet. But because he didn't bet again and because the no cards really came, I just go ahead and shove. A lot of players won't be able to get away from... I'm going to go and bet 100 here. Hold on a minute. And I'm going to bet 225. I'll explain that in a second. Here I'm going to 3-bet to 375 and stick it in. That's actually a really good play by him. He kept his ranges really well balanced by checking that behind on the flop. I bet 100 to increase my fold equity a little bit without gut shotting it over. And 225 on the river when nothing really comes in. We're going to fold out a lot of draws and hopefully some weaker pairs that can call the flop, or turn rather. So in a limped pot, I'm really impressed. That's a really, really good check behind by him. And I don't expect many players at these levels to make that. I'm just going to check this behind. I don't think we're going to get a lot of credit there. Have to fold that to a shove. And here we could shove, but king high plays well enough. I'm just going to check down. Now here I'm going to make a small re-raise, try to make it look like a steal. He flats, which is going to have me just check it down. We min raised on the bottom. Flop bottom pair and check behind here is just going to be a shove. We have a pot size bet left. Expect an ace to still look us up. It could be a missed heart draw. He has a huge cooler against us. And let's see how that hand went down. He limped aces, which is good. I'm going to shove a decent amount there. Bets to flop. I make a small raise. He flats. Check the turn, and then I shove the river. The river was pretty unlucky for us. So that'll be interesting. He says he's gonna send us the hand history, and I can go ahead and review that in a future video, which could be pretty interesting, to comment on his play and how he's playing against me. Overall, he played a pretty good game. So, congrats to him. We'll try to fire one more up, and I will shove down here is really standard. And again, another shove. Ace-3 just doesn't play well enough out of position, so a shove becomes natural. It's certainly profitable. And he just happened to pick up a big hand here, and we cooler him this time. Actually, we didn't cooler him, we just sucked out, but... So, 2 more 33s here. We know nothing about either of these opponents. The last two, this guy knew who I was and asked me why I was playing so low, and the other was a member of the site, which is pretty cool to see, something I haven't seen yet. Once he flats this flop, one of the draws came in and we turned a gut shot. We're just going to have to check. And that's an easy fold. So in the last game, I really didn't find any, neither of them were making huge mistakes that allowed us to do anything a little bit non-standard to try to exploit either of them. It was a bit disappointing. Both of them seemed probably above average for $33 players. Certainly the member played a great game, actually. I'm really impressed how he, when he checked behind top pair there and top set, there's really no way for me to get away from it. But I think he played it pretty solid, obviously. Depending on what he put what percentage of my range he felt was a flush draw on the other hand. But I'm still very impressed with the checking behind 10-6 there, because I did not expect him or anybody really to do that. Here we get flatted again, so it seems I mean, obviously we can't say this early, but certainly indicates that he might float flops kind of wide. He's called both hands out of position and folded neither flop. So I'll check my 7 down here, and I just don't think he's going to bluff here, so I'm going to make a bet and try to get looked up by ace high. He makes a raise, which is really have no clue what to put him on here. I don't know why he would wait to the river with a king. Maybe it's a weird play with quads. No, it's the king. So check behind flop and turn, which is kind of interesting. Most people would value bet the turn. So he didn't extract much value there, which is fortunate for us. 2s, we're just going to have to give up on that board. I'm going to switch to 4xing pre-flop against this guy. He hasn't folded yet, and he's calling a lot of flops, putting us in a lot of tough situations. So I just want to see if he's also calling a high frequency out of position for 4x. If he's not, we'll continue to 3x, and we will raise our number that we're c-betting and lower the percentage. So not really getting many interesting hands on either table. Not seeing a lot of flops now on either. He hasn't called once yet out of position for 4x. So I'll go ahead and continue one last time. If we don't get a call, I'll go ahead and switch back to 3x and toy with the c-bet a little bit more, because obviously he's actually playing better when we're 4xing. We're forcing him to play better, or therefore allowing us to exploit him less. Gonna go ahead and bet 3/4 here. He overbets pot on this river. Given how we played the other hand, he very well could have a 5 here. Or diamonds, I guess. I'm just gonna go ahead and fold. So here I open to 2.5x. I c-bet, and I'll probably 2-barrel a lot of turns there if I think we're getting floated wide. Here is not a board that I can c-bet. I'll make a delayed c-bet on a lot of turns, and that is certainly one of them. King 10 is pretty standard call out of position. Even though he kind of tightened up, he wasn't raising as often. I'm just gonna go ahead and check and hope to get a bet out of him. There's just not enough hands that can call us there. Here's an interesting part. How can we make our hand look most bluffy? This is not good to do if you're not comfortable folding, but I'm going to go ahead and raise fold here. I raise for value, trying to get maybe an ace, a flush, a 7 to make a bad call. And if he shoves, the problem here is if we think our opponent will shove a king. If they would shove a king, then that's a very, very bad raise, because you'll obviously get shoved off the best hand a lot. And folding there is a lot worse. Getting folded out there is a lot worse than the little bit of value that you're gaining. He said he had the nut flush there. Obviously we won't be betting this. I raised to 3x, made it 180, very, very small re-raise. 7-9 will certainly be a call by us. Here we're just going to check. We have top pair with a solid flush draw, and we have to call there. Floated with a gut shot in 2 overs and bet the river. It's not bad. It's our first 3-bet. I'm going to make it small. It's a little bit under normal size. It matches up pretty well with the stacks to get a flat or force him to shove some underpairs. Now the plan here is going to be to bet the flop, check the turn, and then it would depend on the river. But he's almost never going to fold out a queen here on the flop. An ace is just going to be a cooler, we can't get away from it. When he shoves there, I don't expect him to shove a queen, so it really, really polarizes his range towards an ace. Which is pretty miserable for us, but we can't fold it. Down here, he shoves to our 3x, we just have to fold. He hasn't been crazy enough at all for that. He does have the ace here. It's just an unlucky spot. I can't see myself folding that against any $33 player, really. I also don't see me folding that versus any player at any stakes, really, in most spots. So we're playing about 13 big blinds here. He's still 3xing, which if he's ever folding is going to be a pretty big mistake. I'm going to try to work in some limps here. Hopefully we don't get raised. If he lets us, it's going to make us give us a pretty good chance at coming back, if he's going to allow us to see a lot of flops. This we... I mean, we're calling with 2-1 to get a chop. It's not really a great spot. I think he's going to have some kind of hard, decent amount there. He switched to min-raising with kings. Doesn't really change how we can play our hand. The min-raise is kind of a giveaway that he... I mean, it could be either way. I guess some people can do it when they want to fold, but I doubt most players are going to do that. It's normally going to be a hand that's getting called there. But ace-3 has to go in. I'm going to check this flop, and we just have to give it up. So we'll open up one more set of games. He's opening up a little bit, becoming a little bit more aggressive. He shoved a 3x. He has 3-bet us twice now, I think. None of these games really have been very interesting. Kind of a boring video so far. The first 2 games are better than the second 2, but nothing really excited. Not a ton of interesting spots. But that's what most of poker is going to be. Just grinding out versus worse players, trying to find your edges and slowly turning your profits. So I need to go back and look real quick at how often he's been raising. So he hasn't been raising very often at all, which makes me not want to shove this. He hasn't even been limping very often. That again, it's just pretty standard. People are going to do that a ton of the time. So maybe I'll go ahead and turn ace-high into a bluff here. He instantly min-re-raises that, so we're going to have to go ahead and let it go. He min-donks this board. I'm certainly calling. Now, it's not a great turn for us. We have a gut shot, but a lot of hands paired there, and I'm just going to give it up. Even if we get to 8, it's going to put us in a tough spot. So now he's 4xing pre. He's just a really weird player right now. Kind of getting run over by some worse players here, which is not what I like to see. So I'll go ahead and make an identical min bet, which is what I normally do in limp spots here. And for a smaller number of big blinds, I will be shoving 16, a little bit under. It's kind of an interesting spot. I guess I'm going to check and value bet the river. He snap min leads the river. I'm just going to call. I almost raise because it just looks like a block. I mean, it screams blocking bet. But our kicker isn't that strong. The diamonds came in on the river. I just don't, I mean, I don't know, it's debatable. It could go either way for me there. Let's see what we got looked up by there. Queen high. Interesting call by him. So I'll raise with our gut shot. I would also make a raise there with a decent amount of other hands. It was actually, I bet 75 there. I was just kind of not paying enough attention. I should have min bet that. But I don't think it's going to be a huge mistake. If you looked us up with queen high before, I doubt we're going to get folds by king high here, or hands like queen jack. However, I will fire this turn, and then I think if we double barrel, we'll get a lot more folds. I don't want to have to play that hand for 3 streets, but playing for 2, a bet and a double barrel seemed to be pretty good. Now here's kind of an interesting spot. He's not raising a lot, he hasn't been at all, and he 3x's. We have a hand that plays great post flop, and I don't really want to shove because I think this is going to be a better part of his range. Only 20-ish big blinds deep. If he played worse than he does post flop, he plays pretty bad post. Alright, I'm going to make a call. I normally would fold this hand, but I'm going to go ahead and make a call, and I'll check raise this flop. Now that we have showdown value, we have to just check. And I hate to call at a position with a hand like this and not get value, but I think this hand is almost certainly going to be a jack as often as it is an ace high, so I'm just going to check the river. So this hand, the board texture did not change at all. There's really no way you should call the flop and the turn and fold the river, so I'm going to go ahead and bet pot on the river. Like, he's never folding a queen for a pot size bet that he's calling 180 with. He donks half pot, and I'm just going to give it up there. So I have 5,100 down here. He already limped one hand. He doesn't seem like the type who's going to be shoving a ton. Here, I'll bet. Even if you think you're going to get called a decent amount of the time there, you want to have the initiative in the hand. I will shove this, just because I think he's limping enough that I'll fold a decent amount of the time. If the hand had more showdown value, then I would have just checked behind. In this case, after just shoving a limp, not normally want to go into shove the next one so light, so we'll just let that one go. As well as that. this we're going to go ahead and shove. And I don't know much about him, but people can look you up with the worst hands there, especially at these limits. Twos is a really standard shove, just plays awful post flop. We happen to flop a set, and it holds. Here, it's kind of interesting. I don't think he's going to check behind a 7 on the flop. He could have a queen, but when the 7 comes in, he's not going to raise the queen on the river. So I'm hoping to get looked up by a 5 or a 6 here with a spade. 4-8, we can't shove, even though he has so few chips. Check behind our gut shot, and this is an easy shove. And we'll also check behind. Our hand has showdown value, and we're just gonna hope to get there. Anyway, bet. I think that's something I've been neglecting to do. Something I used to do a lot at lower limit games is taking stabs at limped pots. I just think players at these limits do not play very well in limped pots, and they either call way too much or not very much at all. It's a pretty atrocious way to play that hand. He limp called 6 big blinds essentially. With 10-6 suited, shoving is obviously much better. Jack 3, we're gonna have to fold. I missed what he showed us there. Ace Jack. Here we're gonna check. I just don't think we're going to have a ton of fold equity there, especially showing he just called 10-6. He lead shoves into us, which for these stacks is pretty awful. Wow, that's a really interesting spot, and I'm actually going to call here. I don't think he's going to double barrel weaker than us, often, if ever. And I think his hand's going to be a draw there. So a definite, decent amount of the time a draw or air. He happened to have Jack 2 here, so just a gut shot, trying to get some fold equity. It's a really bad spot to do it. Really bad. So here, straight draws open up. Obviously a bunch of pairs come in. I will fire this for 2 streets though. Gonna have to fold. We're giving him a lot of pots in a row here, which is not something you ever really like to see at this high of blinds. Don't know why he 9x there, but I have to check. To be honest, I'm not sure. It's a definite shove. When he's so short, I'm just going to shove my hand like kings. Against some people I would limp, but when he's, under 4 big blinds, we're going to be getting called wide enough that a shove is going to be good anyways. not a great flop for us, so looks like we're going to be playing a little bit longer. Flats our flop here. The 2 comes off, which makes it kind of impossible. Well, I mean, certainly not impossible for us to double barrel, but not a great spot. Wow. Here, though, I will actually fire. Again, we saw he limped called pretty wide, so jacks is going to be an easy shove there when he limps like 7.5 big blinds deep. He happened to show up with queens, which is really, really unlucky for us. We lost a bunch of hands in a row here. And that is the end. So we ran bad. Obviously, when you get someone all in, this I am going to shove. When you get someone all in 4 times in a match, even if they're a 70% favorite every time, you know, if you get them in twice, they're only a 49% to win the whole match. If you get them in a 3rd time, it's much less than that. I think it's a fine shove. He happened to show up with a better hand there. We saw him show up with, or we saw him 9x when he had 850 chips. He raised to 450. I'm obviously assuming that's going to be some of the upper parts of his range, even if it's just including low pocket pairs. So when he min raises, his range is going to be a lot weaker, I think, in most cases. And Queen 4 suited will do decent enough in all-ins there. So about to make another game to 5100. Let me go ahead and min raise. He hasn't been reshoving us at all. There's no reason to do anything else really with queen high. I'm going to make a raise here. There are draws, most certainly. That is about as perfect as a card as we could have come, because a couple of the draws turned an open ender and won't be folding here. And that is about as bad as a card as can come, so we'll check that behind. So we donk called bottom pair, king kicker, and called the turn. The whole hand is just a mess on his part. Obviously, that's really spewy by him. 3s is an easy shove. And he limp calls 9-4 suited, which again is just terrible. I don't know why these players are doing that right now. We happen to win this one. So that will be the end of the video. I really expected this video to be a lot more exciting. I had planned on getting some players who were pretty exploitable, be able to work in some interesting non-standard plays like 5xing limps and how to play post-flop and a lot of the tough situations that come with that, whether versus a crazy opponent versus someone who calls and plays weak post-flop, etc. But there was not anybody who played even remotely close to that on either end, so it just ended up being a standard video. Hope you guys learned something. If you have questions or comments on any of the hands, definitely post in the forum under the video discussion and let me know. I'll be there to answer it. I will probably be taking the hand history from our first villain, who's a member, and making that into a video. And other than that, I get back to the States in a couple of days here. Just over, I leave on December 12th, but I'll probably be settled by the 18th. So after that, you guys should expect more video series from me and less individual videos of playing. So definitely go to the heads up forum and let me know your requests. Let me know everything you want to see from me, and I will see you soon. Good luck.